Good late Thursday or late Friday. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, giving a look at that Doppler perspective here across the southeast. Pretty much the southeast, not quite everywhere, but you do see the storyline here in terms of areas there around Atlanta, around Birmingham, up toward Huntsville. There, you do see quite a bit of moisture, even some thunderstorm activity on the map here. It's midnight in that central time zone, 1 o'clock here in the east, and you do see there is some activity up there as you're looking in tighter there on the view. Birmingham, just south of Anniston there, as we're tracking things south of Anniston there. And you can kind of see around Atlanta, there's a flash flood warning. This is kind of a sign of things to come. That's what I'm showing you in terms of some of this action coming our way, not to this level of coverage, not to this level of intensity with the radar colors, but kind of coming our way here as we look ahead in toward the timeline. So again, something to be mindful of here. We do have a general thunderstorm risk on that Friday. I wouldn't be surprised to see a marginal risk come into play, but even if that doesn't happen, a marginal severe risk, what I'm referring to, even if that doesn't happen, we could have a few strong to severe storms here locally today on your Friday and even into early on that Saturday. So just stay aware here, stay up to date with the very latest. I'll keep you guys informed here, obviously, on the very latest here as we're tracking things. So, again, just giving you that overview here as you can kind of see some of that stuff. Let me go ahead and put this into motion in terms of what we're kind of looking at. You saw what the radar was looking like. Now, I know the models have had some issues handling some of that stuff further to the north, but let me go ahead and put on the model guidance here, and then we'll put that to about what it should look like now compared, that's the 1 a.m. Eastern modal run. You do see here some of this progressing on in as we take it here out to about 6 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. You see some of our northern counties. We'll see how robust this is, but we even have some strong storms moving in here at sunrise, so not that long away. Not long, from now, really, as we're looking and as we're tracking things. And these current temperatures, help that here. These are the current 1 a.m. readings. I'll take those off, though, because I don't want to confuse anybody. But I'm not going to change a whole bunch here overnight in general. As we're seeing warmer air now, warmer temperatures, that storyline here, as we're keeping you guys up to date here on the very latest. So, again, let me go ahead and kind of progress this a little bit further. You can kind of see here, this is the view as of at 8 a.m. You see things kind of falling off, falling off some there in our southwest Georgia counties, and if that's the case, then maybe more just beneficial rainfall here, which would be good. But we got to watch out for lightning because this general thunderstorm risk, we have that drought concern that's still very significant. If we get unlucky and get lightning in areas and we don't actually get the precip to fall, then that can be really problematic because then this could counteract what we're hoping for, and that's beneficial rain. It could end up being a situation where we end up seeing some of that electrical energy instead starting fires, and then they end up smoldering and then ultimately spreading as winds can pick up in some of these spots as we look ahead in the timeline. And as we're drawing out here as well, I know we do have that Bradford County Fair, so you guys don't want the rain for that, though. Unfortunately, it's starting to look like the chance has gone up some for impacts here later on that Friday to the fair in terms of rain, but we have to have the rain. We have fire concerns. We have another issue in Bradford on that Thursday, so the rain is more important here than those outdoor events like Savannah Banana Baseball in Tallahassee or FSU Baseball there in Tallahassee as well. If it's impacted, FSU softball, they had to move their schedule around some, but as we're looking, talking about FSU softball, but we have to have the rain. That's more important than if outdoor events get impacted here or not. So let me go ahead and progress this even further here as we look into toward the timeline. You do see at about 10 a.m., 11 a.m., noon, 1 o'clock, you see more of just that beneficial rain. But some of the models have really kind of had issues with resolving some of this to the north. There were quite a few more warnings than I think most people were thinking there on that Thursday up toward Alabama, Mississippi, southern Tennessee, and the like. That was a surprise there. Some areas had warnings. They weren't even under a marginal risk, even under a thunderstorm risk, I don't think, at points. We had severe thunderstorm warnings with hail. That hail threat there, definitely an issue for folks. So just be mindful that the chance isn't huge at all today, but it's not zero. I don't want to rule it out here as we're tracking things. So just stay aware. You don't see the rain around Stark at about that 17Z time frame, which is 12 o'clock, but as I progress this on here, you'll start to see that move on in some. Maybe not a severe risk too much then, but you see, as we get closer to fair start time here on that Friday, as things get into play, we have some moisture showing up now. I need to switch this to an extended run of the model, so let me just for a second here. We're going to go ahead and move here along a little bit, move along as we're looking here, as we're tracking things, and that's 3 o'clock. On the timeline here. This is the extended run. It actually had a little bit more. And we have to watch some of the stuff in the Gulf there too. You see some of those areas of red. That is indicative here. Indicative of maybe some stronger storm activity in theory here. Not a guarantee, but that could come in towards southern counties and then into towards central Florida later on. And that might have more lightning with it too, which could be fire issues in terms of, unfortunately, maybe igniting some wildfire if we're not careful here. So this is the view as of about 3 o'clock here on the model, 4 o'clock. This says something different in the 4Z run. It shows more of this, so there is still some split here, but this is the last extended run of the high res here, so kind of have to, go with this for now. Again, there's been some uncertainty, and maybe the fair will be okay in terms of weather, though. If that's the case, we probably don't end up getting as much rain as we like, and then, we're not going to get as much as we like anyway, but we want an inch, give or take, but if we end up only getting a quarter inch, that's really not a good thing, because this is our really, only chance here for that beneficial rain for probably about a week or so, as we're looking at least. I mean, maybe even longer than that. I mean, there'll be some chances that are on that lower end, but in terms of real, heavy rainfall at points over a bigger area, not just hit and miss stuff. This is our chance here, and we need to get the precip to fall. You can see there, that's 4 p.m., that's 5 p.m. This shows it being a big impact for those fair plans here. We'll see as we're looking, as we're tracking things. You can kind of see here as we keep progressing, looking later on, you see some of that maybe moving out, but we'll see, because I'll, keep going with this. Some of the models have had more coming in the overnight and the early parts of Saturday, which would help, not impacting the events and just giving us some rain there. Maybe not severe according to that. Now, I don't want to rule it out, because, again, the models have had some, major issues, quite honestly, resolving this situation more than they generally do. So it's, it's a tricky forecast here. I do have the rain chance higher now, 70% though, for that Friday here, as we're looking, as we're tracking. Again, looking here at 0Z, which gets us out there, in toward those evening hours past sunset. You see some action here. Maybe some of these red could indicate, a strong thunderstorm, significant on their advisories, maybe a severe thunderstorm warning, but the models, as I back this up, you see some of that maybe further back, 5 o'clock there in our southern counties, a lot to a Marion. We'll see, it's not a guarantee this will happen like this here. It may end up, being less covers than this here, and then that would be unfortunate, but we also want to not have the severe weather and the lightning, so it's a give and take in a lot of ways here. I mean, this shows a little bit more rain here in terms of that 6-hour rainfall forecast here, going out from 18Z to 0Z, which gets you from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. on that Friday. This shows here parts of Bradford County getting over half inch of rain, as we're looking in this darker blue here, like around Laurie and Rayford and Lake Butler and Brooker. We really need the rain down there with all the fire concerns they've had around County Road 18, around areas like Brooker and Graham here lately. You see Hampton a half inch. We want that. We don't want the storm action, but that would be the most rain we've had here in a bit. I mean, you have to go back a while. I'll look back. I don't think, maybe even the last 25 days we've had that much rain. So just looking back here at my rain gauge here, going through the last 25 days, 1 to 15th, we did have 0.45 here as we were looking, but that was the only day that we came close. This would exceed that according to this forecast here. So, I mean, we've had a 10th here, a 10th there. I just backed it all the way up on my rain gauge. That's what you're that beat, but, went all the way through the days. But my point is here, as we're looking, as we're tracking things, this could be more here as we're giving you guys the very latest. So, again, this could be the most rain we've had in a while, but again, have to watch out for lightning. It's not a guarantee, and it could impact outdoor events, but we have to have the precip. This actually says around, areas of Marion County. This was about 3 inches in a spot here, southeast of Ocala. That would be really helpful. Again, would have the lightning concern, maybe even some severe weather concerns with something like that. In the Levy County, you see just one run, which, everything varies. But you see around areas, communities like Romeo there, in parts of western Marion County, you see spots like that closer to 2.5 inches, but it's not a guarantee it's going to set up like that. That is, probably going to be displaced some. That's just how model guidance works. You can't take it, as what's going to be the exact forecast here. There's going to be some differential, of course. There's going to be some differential here as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So, again, we just have to be very mindful here of the situation. Obviously, we have to be very mindful that, it's not going to play out exactly like here. Maybe, this says it would here in general. You have to just be prepared for a little bit of displacement, or even in some cases, a lot of displacement here. So, definitely, something to be mindful of here as we're tracking things. And now, if you're all watching live, you do see 50s and 60s here on the map, and you do see here some scattered light showers, maybe in a few spots, but not that big of a deal. Not really showing up on the METARs. Could have some fog concerns, upper current risk at the beaches here too. But you see to the north, this is where we have some accident, even again, flash flood warning toward Atlanta. So they're getting some pretty, good rains, but in some cases a little too much as we're looking up that way. I know, looking here at some of the factors, not much energy right now. I know 4 hours ago, it was a different story, in terms of the warning acts, and there was more energy, not overwhelming though. It was not, a setup where it's obvious because this didn't show any surface-based cape, but you still had some severe warnings like in southern Tennessee, and had more energy out toward Mississippi. You had a bunch of warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, not tornado warnings at least, but still a bunch of warnings out there. So we have to just be careful because even if the parameters aren't overwhelming here, by any means, you could still have some issues. So sometimes things can be tricky here in the meteorology in terms of, it not looking like an overly obvious day. I know back in 24, at the beginning of February, we had a day where we had hail reported in a lot of places. And we didn't have, but I think there's a marginal risk in play, and we ended up getting just a slew of tornado warnings and weak tornadoes to develop. I know it was more about hail on that Thursday or like Mississippi and Tennessee and Alabama and the like there versus any type of tornadic activity in the widespread level. I think there was one maybe brief spin there toward the surface in a spot, maybe a tornado there based on storm reports there in the word parts of like Jefferson County, Alabama there, but mostly about hail. So that, we didn't have any official tornado warnings there on that Thursday as we were looking at that national level. But yeah, things can overachieve sometimes. These temperatures, could support that. So just stay aware, and we'll give you guys the latest. If we have any severe thunderstorm warnings, we'll be posting about them at the very minimum of not coming on here. And obviously, if we have any tornado warnings in the 62 counties, they'll be live here with you guys to guide you through it. Probably be on for any of the severe thunderstorm warnings as well. If we happen to have a flash flood warning, we'll be letting you guys know about that here too, though. That'd be kind of surprising. We have it around Atlanta, but they're so urban up there. Sometimes just with all the concrete, a few inches can start to really cause problems around areas there like the Peachtree Airport there. So that's kind of an example, for instance. But as we go ahead and broaden things out, as we look at it, as we track things here, we do have a look here now to see you guys of that drought monitor. I do want to go ahead and talk about that. I was referring to that in the description of the video and in the description of this update. And I need to show you guys this. This is something where we do have some of that concern, obviously, as we're looking here ahead in the timeline. You can see the extreme drought there is something that is not fun to talk about. We're not to the exceptional, but we're pretty close, I would say. If we don't get as much rain as we're thinking we're going to get here coming up, we might be an exceptional next week. Hopefully a lot of our spots can get an inch of rain, but it's definitely no guarantee. Not guaranteed here, so be aware of that. As we give you the latest updates, definitely be aware of that here. As I go ahead and move along, I do want to say here, just remember about the wildfires. There's tips to evacuate from wildfire. Just always stay aware of your environment. Leave when asked by your local emergency officials there. Just be aware here. Stay informed for the very latest here. These tips are from California. We don't have types of terrain like that here, but we still have to be very careful because things could rapidly evolve. If we have wind in play, we don't have rain. We have lightning, that trigger stuff. that can be problematic. So you have to really be careful here. We'll be continuing to give you guys the very latest here, in the Weather Center. So just stay tuned here for the very latest on all that. I know as we're tracking things here, it's very important here to look at, those wind forecasts. And as we see here, we do have those winds that could get up to about 20 miles an hour on that Friday, for instance. On a Saturday, I know we're going to have that rain early on, and then as we look ahead in the timeline, we'll just have to see, some of these days, if those winds get up there, even just a little, that can be an issue. Sunday afternoon could get pretty gusty, and the humidity could be like in that 40% range, give or take, and that can be problematic. So just have to be very careful here. Obviously, Monday looks like it could be pretty gusty, 20-mile-an-hour winds, give or take here. So I see Tuesday here. Yeah, it doesn't look great in terms of some of this. So there are definitely some fire weather concerns. The humidity starts building in some, at least, but we'll just have to continue to watch things, hope for more rainfall with the event, so it precludes that threat somewhat. Not completely, of course it won't, but just got to be aware here. Let's go ahead and see that Georgia Drought Monitor now. You can see the extreme drought situation to so many of our counties there in Georgia. With this, you just have to be very vigilant. Obviously, you have a severe drought for a lot of folks. And then as we look here at that rainfall forecast, you can see that rainfall forecast there toward the Stark area, for instance. This goes, a little bit lower than what we'd like to see, only about ½ inch, give or take. I know you see around Jacksonville about ½ inch, Tallahassee about ½ inch, but hopefully some, spots here will get a little bit more than what this is showing. We have some of the maximums just on the very southern fringe of Roy, just outside of the area there, looking like kind of more outside of Flagler, more toward areas there like Daytona Beach, maybe. They need it too. They need to rain. They have had wildfire concerns too. But, in terms of our area, really wanting to rain, a lot of that rain's getting more up into toward like Missouri there. You see northeast Oklahoma and areas up to the north there, I know, around Macon. Looking like a tad bit more rain maybe in general there in central Georgia than what we're going to see down here. Overall, granted, maybe like areas around Clipman County or Albany there in our northwestern counties could see pretty similar totals here in the geographic space there. A lot of that coming in this morning here on that early Friday even. So be aware of that. Maybe a stronger storm with that. Things can always overachieve here in this area. We've seen it, plenty of times before. I mean, they can underachieve too, but just stay aware. We'll pop in here if warranted, as warranted, and you have the interactive radar available as well, cloudweather.com. So it's all about keeping you guys up to date. I know we're always giving you the latest for the 62 counties here. If there's any tornado warning storms moving through, we'll be on, of course, and severe thunderstorm warnings. Most of the time here, we're on for those as well. I mean, we're going to at least post about them. That's what we've been doing here for, multiple years. Every tornado warning storm for the last 6 years or so. And then this for thunderstorm warnings, of course. In summer times, we'll post more. That's been the plan here anyway. But as we're looking, as we're tracking things, those severe thunderstorm warnings, this time of year a little bit less, in some cases a lot less often, and lot less frequent there. A lot less frequent. So that means there's something that could catch people off guard more. So then we need to be on the air. So let me go ahead and show you here the fog safety tips, though, because we have some of that concern. Some areas here, as you're looking ahead, warmer temperatures now 56 here. East of Stark, we've actually warmed up some here. It's 52 here around midnight, so 56 now. Gone up some in the last hour. I know that wind direction, that can put a role in that sometimes here too. And yeah, we have that wind coming from the south. We're getting in, a pattern here a little more favorable for some moisture here on that local level, as you can see here. So going to be kind of watching for that. You see some fog to the west on up here that's dense toward areas west of our area, but around Crestview there. See some south of our area around the Tampa region and MacDill Air Force Base here at 3/8 of a mile visibility there. So that's something to be mindful of as we're tracking things. I know as we're giving you guys the very latest on everything. So that's kind of the storyline there. I know we're always, watching for the outdoor events, and we don't want the rain to disrupt them, but we have to have the precip and all those different outdoor events that we have around here this weekend. As we're tracking things here, I know we're just trying to give you guys the very latest on things, and I know as we're looking down toward like Gainesville and the like, they're gonna, be playing Miami. They're gonna be playing Miami, but they're gonna be playing down in South Florida for that. So, as we're looking and as we're tracking things for that in terms of college baseball. So, that's kind of the storyline there. We'll have to see how the weather affects them. Could impact some of that down there too. But, thinking about FSU baseball, obviously, and maybe extra folks watching that because the Savannah Bananas there. The weather looks like it may end up being okay for like the nighttime action out there toward Tallahassee with that. A lot of attention toward Tallahassee for that. The fair here, though, the timing might not work out great for Friday night, which is obviously normally a busy night. So we'll have to watch for that. Always just, be mindful here of everything here across the area as we see that isolated strong and severe storm potential here. As isolated strong and severe storm is possible. There's not a formal risk, but I don't want to rule it out. Didn't have a formal risk in some areas on that Thursday and things just overachieve. I mean, it's just how it is sometimes. As meteorologists, we try our best, but sometimes things just happen with Mother Nature here and the overall meteorology, the models, the forecast. Everybody tries really hard, and things just don't quite work out with that forecast. So you just have to be very, cognizant sometimes here. That's why I want to not take the chance out of the forecast, even though we don't have a formal risk here in terms of severe. The general thunderstorm risk it says, in general, in theory that we could have the idea that, some of those could get strong. And in this case, I don't want to rule out the chance of an isolated severe storm or two. Maybe a gusty, area of wind in there, maybe some hail. The tornado chance pretty low here. Again, not going to completely rule it out. If we had something like that, I would probably say our southern flank there, maybe later, closer to the evening. But that's kind of, it's pretty remote chance of the tornado potential. But again, don't want to rule it out around here. We've had pretty low risk here, produced tornadoes like around Stark here in 2020 and 2021. So I don't want to completely rule that out. But I'm not anticipating a tornadic potential really to come into play on that Friday at this point. But a severe thunderstorm warning scenario definitely could evolve here and there. So just stay vigilant. We're almost to March here. We're not too far away from moving those clocks there, losing an hour of sleep, but getting and gaining that hour of daylight in the evening. Not this weekend, but I believe it's next weekend there as we're looking and as we're tracking things. You can see here, though, the temperatures. I mean, these are above average. These are pretty nice, for the fair and the like. Most of Saturday, you see that 50%. But really, end of the afternoon and evening when people want to be out and about, the weather should be clearing out of pretty much everybody's, backyard, every neighborhood, even that 50% for that Saturday really in the early morning, not for Tallahassee there and the like. But as we look toward Stark, Gainesville, that, could be before sunrise really. Then as we looking towards Sunday, you don't see much of a chance there. As you're looking, I believe it's like senior day at the fair there here in Stark. That's exciting. And then as we look here towards Sunday, later on in the evening, you'll be seeing some temperature action cooling down. But, as we're seeing some of those 50s, not as above average for the lows as we are the highs. As, we see that storyline in toward Monday, Tuesday, though, closer to 80. And Wednesday, Thursday, close, not exceeding 80 degrees there. Rain chance start to tick back up a little. It starts to tick back up. But again, not a real big chance there as we're looking and tracking things. And we do need that because of the drought conditions we're in, the drought situation. You see the temperature, again, we are below average here in terms of just that rainfall, though, by a lot. But in terms of the temperatures, we're actually going to be seeing above average here. Yeah, that's the storyline with that. But that rainfall here, we're in a situation we need the rain desperately. We need a lot more rain here, a lot more precip. Yeah, the storyline here is we get into March. That's the time of year where we could start to really have more problems with wildfires. So just be prepared here. Unfortunately, with these wildfire situations, things can happen very quick. Got to be ready. We try to give you the latest on those as we, get it in here, cloud weather. But sometimes things are so, so rapid with wildfire. It's not like a tornado situation. Sometimes you can see the smoke from radar, but sometimes, it's already really happening by the time it gets bad and, enough for us to know about it here. Evacuations are already required for an area. So you have to sign up for like community level alerts and or, county alerts from like local emergency managers and the like. A lot of those offer that here across the region. So be aware and be thinking about that here, obviously. because that's a unique situation. They might just be having to knock on doors here because things are so rapid, especially if it's like a pretty sparsely populated area. The firefighters might just be knocking, and officials might just be knocking on doors to try to get people out. So yeah, just be aware, be, cognizant here of the situation as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So that's the storyline there. I think, we're going to start seeing more humidity ultimately, not, as much so like toward like Sunday afternoon. It's not going to be very high, the humidity at points, and we're going to have some wind around. So we have to be cognizant of that here. Eventually, you start, as you see those lows get a little bit higher, that it's generally an indicator as the temperatures come a little closer together, a little bit more humid, a little bit more rain chance can sometimes coincide with that, as it generally is here. But yeah, when you have those higher lows, that could help a little with the fire danger and putting it down, putting it a little bit lower there. But yeah, we're going to keep you guys up to date on all that here in the Weather Center as we watch things, as we track things. We need the rain. We're going to have a low strong and severe chance here today. It's not, a big one, but between all the counties that we have here, it's definitely not out of the question we could have a rogue severe thunderstorm warning or two. I definitely think that, is a distinct possibility here. So make sure you're staying tuned. If we don't have to break in, though, between now and our next scheduled update, which is late Tuesday into early Wednesday, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for trusting me here. Let me see if there are any questions or comments from any of the viewers there at home. I see viewers there like Thomas watching. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for tuning in. I think we'll just go ahead and leave it at 7-day for now. Have a great night, everybody. You can, of course, find the latest coverage on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, youtube.com/thatcloudweather, a place you can even back it up, that stream while I'm on, not having to wait to the end of it, but back things up and see what I said a few moments ago in terms of a certain topic or something like that if you missed anything. So have a great night, everybody. We do have rip current risk at the beaches, of course, when there's lightning around, though. You don't want to be in that water either. But we'll just be, watching for that here. We'll be watching some of that wind action around, too, which is a concern with the wildfire danger still continuing. We'll have to see if we get any of those red flag warnings. It's not out of the question here. Hopefully not. But it's definitely, a possibility here if we get, some of these levels to get a little bit, higher with the winds and or lower that humidity here. We have to be kind of cognizant of that here as we look at the different numbers. A red flag warning is a fire weather warning, really. It's just, fire weather warning's a name that a lot of folks give it to it, but officially it comes across as a red flag warning. So that's what that kind of means if you see that pop up sometimes. We have to really be careful. I know we're looking to where like Jacksonville, there's an extended period of breezy onshore winds expected next week. And then that can increase some of the marine hazards here as we start to see maybe spring breakers even come into the picture here. So yeah, be careful at the beaches. We don't want tragedies to happen. People are coming, down from up north, coming down from like Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, other places. If you start to have that spring break, I know it kind of varies kind of a little early for maybe some places, but depending on where you're at, some of those spring breaks, they started to get going, and then we don't want tragedy to happen, so make sure you're paying attention there. If you're not a strong swimmer, which I know a lot of folks up there aren't as familiar maybe with the oceans down here. It's something really you're advised to generally stay out of the water here. Just enjoy maybe the sand and stay out of that water here if you can't handle it, because those rip currents can be deadly. Those are, very significant threats sometimes. That is a very hidden danger here in meteorology, in the sciences here, and just in the weather department in general. So yeah, be aware of that here as we're looking, as we're tracking. But for now, have a great night. We'll pop back in if we need to in the days ahead for any severe weather concern and or wildfire scenarios that are breaking out. Generally, we'll be breaking in if there's, evacuations, probably not otherwise, but of course we'll play it year by year in the Weather Center. But for now, have a great night, everybody. Stay safe, and that'll do it here for the time being. Try to enjoy that weekend, though, afternoon on Saturday through Sunday. Assuming we don't have the smoke concerns and the air quality concerns, things to be pretty good for the outdoor events to try to enjoy. I know, just have fun out there, try to enjoy things and make the most of things here. Just have a happy weekend.